Test, test. So now that we've done a rhetorical analysis essay, many of you guys had some questions for me that popped up during the process. So I'd like to answer those questions now for you. Okay, just to kind of backtrack, an effective rhetorical analysis essay is where you show understanding of how the rhetorical triangle elements are all related, and also how an author is able to achieve the goal that he or she set out to achieve by writing the speech or the text. So, your job is to prove that you can fully analyze all the elements of rhetoric. Why did the author write this piece? Who is the author wanting to speak to in writing or presenting this letter, speech, or article? And how does the author actually do that? And so we use a lot of buzzwords. I teach you guys all these terms, past, purpose, audience, strategies, but take your mind out of the essay and just think about a piece rhetorically. If I gave you guys a lesson in class, think of why I'm giving you that lesson. Think of what I needed to know about you as my students in order to present that lesson. When the president gets up on national television to present a speech or a press conference, think about who he's targeting. Think about what his goal is with that particular speech. Is his goal to inform America that we're going to war? Who does he need to persuade that that's a good idea? So think about the interplay of the triangle. That's really what this essay is all about. Some of the things that you guys will need to work on is reading comprehension. You have to be able to read a text. Sometimes they'll be in contemporary language, sometimes they'll be archaic, like the Abigail Adams prompt from several hundred years ago. You'll have to be able to read a variety of texts and understand what is happening in the text. And you can't take a lot of time to do that. So being able to read and comprehend a piece quickly is going to be a skill that we will practice during the course of this year. There's only so much practice I can give you. So I will post some additional speeches and texts on Planbook. And during the course of the year, practice with them. See if you can read them and understand them quickly. Reading Snapchats and Instagram posts, these things are not going to help you guys for this course. And so try periodically to read a complex text and figure out what the heck it's talking about quickly. Students are also going to have to read between the lines. So in other words, go past the reading comprehension. Once you figure out what it's saying face value, what does it mean? Who was writing it? Why were they writing it? What did they do in the piece to make it be persuasive for whatever their ultimate goal was? And remember that y'all should never see yourselves as part of the audience. Abigail Adams was not writing to Alpharetta High School juniors. Okay, so we should never see those pronouns when you're writing your essay because you're not part of the audience. Speaking of audience, some teachers argue that audience awareness is by far the most important part for success on this essay. So these are some bulleted questions about things that you should think about while you are reading the piece. When you guys are doing your annotations for your 2 chapters of your nonfiction books, yes, you can do a rhetorical triangle at the very end of the chapter, but a much stronger way to analyze for audience purpose and all the other parts of the triangle and strategies is to do it while you are reading. And so I told many of you guys last week, rather than doing a triangle when you finish the chapter, annotate as you go. That's what's going to help you with this essay. As you're reading, what do you know about the author? Or the audience, excuse me, what clues does the speaker give you about the audience as you read? What does the audience already know? Context. A lot of these things will pop up in the actual passage. So try using some of these guiding questions when you're practicing reading these texts and trying to figure out more about the triangle as you read. The strongest persuaders know their audience. You think about this, the best speech makers in all of history. They know their audience. If you don't know your audience's hopes, dreams, goals, concerns, weaknesses, then the message will fall flat. So like I said, if you want to expand on your triangle analysis abilities, think about the audience. With audience comes purpose. When you have a good awareness of who your audience is, who the speaker is really wanting to have hear the message, then you know why the speaker is presenting the message in the first place. Think about the I Have a Dream speech. Who did MLK really want to target? Okay, once he figured out who he was targeting, then he was able to figure out why he was giving that message in the first place. So a lot of you guys asked me about structure of the rhetorical analysis essay, thinking about the essay itself for AP. Introduction, 2 or 3, if you can, body paragraphs and conclusion. In your intro, you're going to provide some context about whatever issue you're talking about. Usually you'll pull context from the context section on the prompt page. Thesis statement should include parts of the triangle, specifically purpose, audience, and then the strategies that the author has used. When you're doing your body paragraphs, here are some things that you guys can do to enhance your analysis. Now that you've done this once, now you can start to make it more advanced. So rather than just picking out strategies all willy-nilly, see if you can move chronologically through the essay. In other words, your first body paragraph should be the first rhetorical strategy that you saw happen in the text. Your second body paragraph will be the next strategy that you saw happen within the text, and so on and so forth. By the end of the year, many of you guys will actually be writing 3 body paragraphs. And for this essay, the graders and myself are looking at, do you fully understand this piece? Not can you pick out one example of a metaphor and then move on. Do you understand the entire piece and how the speaker was able to convey his or her message throughout the entire piece? And so the more body paragraphs you can have here, the better. We did talk in class about if you were able to pick out strategies where that were used multiple times. So that would be a double chunk, include 2 pieces of evidence for a particular strategy. That's one way of achieving this goal of working the entire piece and not just one paragraph of the text. Finally, your conclusion. There's 2 ways you can do a conclusion paragraph. I probably got 10 questions about the conclusion. The way that most of you probably did on the practice essay on Friday, which is totally fine, just kind of restate what your argument was. Your argument was, here's the speaker, here's for Friday, here's his message, here's who he was targeting, and here's why he was targeting it, and here's how he targeted that audience with those strategies. So just a rephrasing or a summary of what you wrote about. That's one way you can do it. Nothing wrong with that. However, especially as we are crunched for time on this essay, I wonder if this could be a better strategy for us. I usually tell students about this second semester, if you're feeling like you would like to start practicing this technique, in your conclusion, you can talk about how, one of 2 things, how the speaker organized the text. Did the speaker first start with an anecdote and then move into the problem, and then by the end explain a possible solution? So in your conclusion, you can talk about the structure. Something else you can do is talk about how the speaker closed the text. So how did JFK wrap up his speech? How did Abigail Adams end her letter? So either of those are going to be effective. According to the graders, that's another strategy. See? So if you talk about the organization, that's a rhetorical strategy. That was an intentional choice made by the author. Or you can also talk about how the speaker wrapped up his or her piece. And that's another rhetorical strategy. If those are 2 things that you're not quite ready for, you can most definitely write 2 or 3 sentence summary about what you've already discussed. Here's some other tips. We've already talked about a lot of these things. Take a moment on your own to read through some of these bullets. Okay, here's some more questions from you guys. How do I pick the best strategies? What counts as a strategy? What if I can't pick out strategies quick? Practice. Practice. Right now, you might be picking out really good strategies, but it's going to take a lot of practice to be able to pick out the best and the best quickly. And I will keep practicing with you guys all year. This is a new skill for most of you. It's not something you've worked on, for 5 or 6 years in school. So it's going to take time. You have to work with me and you have to practice on your own. What if I get the wrong purpose? Can there be more than one purpose? If you get the wrong purpose, your entire essay is faulty. So if you said that Abigail Adams, her purpose in writing that letter to her son was to persuade him to come home, that he didn't need to go on the journey, then that's a reading comprehension issue. The entire essay, if you think about it, your entire analysis of the text is wrong. And so if you get the purpose or the audience wrong, it sounds like a really small piece to get wrong. Even if your analysis and your chunks are awesome, they're wrong because you didn't understand why the person wrote the piece. Therefore, the strategies, which are things that the speaker does to achieve his or her goal, will also be wrong because you got the goal wrong. So unfortunately, it's like a snowball effect. Yes, there can absolutely be more than one purpose. Keep in mind when we studied in class, if there's more than one purpose, there might be more than one audience. And so be aware of that. If there is only one targeted audience, there can be more than one purpose, but usually they're quite similar. And so you can kind of develop them together. If it's correct, you can analyze 2 purposes for sure. I'm weary of telling y'all to pick out multiple purposes because oftentimes there's just one. But in more complex texts, it is absolutely possible. Yep. Can you use personal pronouns in quotes? You can, but a more advanced way of writing your quotes is to change the personal pronouns, put it in brackets, which is the parentheses with the hard line. So like half of a square is the shape of a bracket. Instead of saying, I or me or my, change it to whatever pronoun works, his, her. Change it so that when you read your sentence out loud, it flows nicely. Remember how we practice with embedding when you read your sentence out loud? I shouldn't be able to tell where your quote starts and stops. Try doing that. It's not an issue at this point if you use personal pronouns in your quotes, but eventually we'll want to get away from it by changing them with brackets. Do I have to quote the text or can I say in lines 5 through 7? Try to actually quote the text. If you're quoting an entire paragraph, then that's problematic. If you're quoting repetition, you can always say in lines 10 through 25, whoever the speaker is used the repeated phrase, I will go, and put that in quotes. And then you can paraphrase kind of, but if possible, you always want to try to quote the text. That's not 100% of the time because there's a lot of things that could happen. This isn't a hard set rule, but try to quote the text directly if possible for rhetorical analysis essays. How do I cite the authors from these texts? The authors, whoever's making the speech or the letter or the article. So it should say in the context, whoever your speaker is the person who's making the speech. So in Friday's practice, it was JFK. So you would put in parentheses Kennedy or JFK or President Kennedy, whatever you want. And so for rhetorical analysis, you want to cite the line numbers. So in addition to saying Kennedy, you would say Kennedy 6 through 7, if those were the lines that you were quoting. You can say President Kennedy, and then quote him. But then at the end, it's good practice to say Kennedy lines whatever through whatever, or just, line 10. Use your MLA. How can I tell if my analysis is deep enough? Practice. How can I prevent my analysis from being redundant? Practice. And unfortunately, having good thoughts in your head. So some of us don't have very many thoughts in our head in terms of rhetorical analysis. I'm sure you have many other thoughts about many other things, but you don't have the thoughts right now because you guys have not been taught to critically think and critically analyze enough. And that's not because of your 9th and 10th grade teachers, that's because of your generation of children. Things are changing, so you're not being taught to critically analyze. And so that's my job, but it's also your job to practice on your own time, thinking about texts, analyzing them, reading the complex texts. Every time we do a rhetorical triangle, it seems super annoying, but I'm forcing you to think deeply, especially with the context and picking out lines that show the purpose in the audience. So critically thinking is what's going to help you with your analysis. Reading sample essays will also help you because then you're seeing what other people are doing, and then you can model your thinking after their thinking. And so I tell students all the time that we might not be writing an essay every week, but all the activities and the practice that we do in class, all the stuff that y'all might think is busy work or petty, it's practice for thinking. And if I can get your brains to think more, then you'll have more thoughts when you do your essay analysis. It's hard for y'all to understand this because it's a skills-based course, but you have to trust me, trust the process, and you have to practice. Can I use knowledge about the time period or speaker that isn't stated in the context blurb on the prompt page? 100% yes. If you know a bunch of stuff about the steel industries and JFK, include it in there. What happens, though, if you forget what your task is, you end up just writing a history lesson. So be cognizant of that. This is not an assessment on how much you know about the period or the speaker. It's an awareness of the text on the page. So absolutely add some context if you know it, if you're 100% sure that it's accurate, but be aware that we're not really giving you credit for that. But if that's going to help enhance your argument of what the speaker's goal was within the piece, then 100% yes, include a few sentences of your own ideas. And the final question that I did receive on a post-it: no, I do not have lotion that gets rid of your teenage angst, but I can keep giving you practice for analysis. Keep eating your peppermints, keep pumping that stress relief lotion. That's all I can do for you. So now what? Take the information that I just gave you, absorb it, maybe rewatch this slideshow again, as invigorating and fascinating as my voice has been for the last 16 minutes. If this stuff can sink in, you'll be better off as we move forward. You can also try reading the remaining Abigail Adams sample essays. Some of you guys, 6th period, y'all have the packet. 5th period, it's electronic. If you lost the packet or you weren't in class, I will post it to Planbook. Seeing sample essays helps most of you. It's not going to help all of you. There's not one size fits all for practice for this course, but reading how other people analyzed and what scores they got as a result of their analysis is very helpful. And again, this is a brand new way of thinking, and so try not to be too hard on yourself. There are 3 essays in this course. All of you will have one strength, and all of you will probably be weak on one of them. This is, for most of you guys, the weakness because you just haven't done it enough. And so work on your own brain, read the news, read complex texts, think about them, analyze them, question everything. That's how you're going to get better on your own time. Unfortunately, the only way to improve is to practice. Okay. I will see you guys next week. Check Planbook for the Abigail Adams prompts, additional practice, just to see when you're writing this essay next week. And try to be here all 3 days next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because we're going to keep doing some practice and you're going to write your first real essay for the major. Thanks, you guys. Have a good weekend.